Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. How you all doing? I hope you're all okay out there. So-called summer. We had 2 hot days. Even got a bit of a tan. But yeah, that was the end of it. I think that was our summer. And there were so many warnings about how bad it had been. It was really hot, but we got... that was it. From then, the sun hasn't come out again. But, it might come back. I hope you've all been okay. Now, tonight's story I want to talk to you about is, I can't tell if this is straight or not. Oh, it's a nightmare. My actual holder is, it's on its way out. I need to get a new one. But it's a whole ring light thing and everything that I got. But I can't have the ring light on because it reflects off my glasses, just like there are reflections at the minute, but it's 10 times worse with the ring light. So, the holder's no good either now. It's just all pointless. Anyway, tonight's story, terrible. The Harrowing Mary Vincent Story. The what I've seen it on, it's maimed and left for dead. Just a horrible... Do you know, I'd heard about this story quite a while ago, and it was very brief what I seen on it, and then I kind of came away from it, and it come back to me the other day, and I thought, do you know what, I didn't really look into that, and I felt awful because I really should have. So okay, we've got Mary Vincent. She was born in 1963, so we are going back a long time. But she was born in 1963. She was one of 7 children living in Las Vegas in America. Now, like all of us, she started to rebel in her teenage years. Her dad served in the military. Her mum was a blackjack dealer. And she kind of had, she wasn't really... I suppose it was a bit chaotic. So when she was 15, her parents started going through a bit of a messy divorce when she was about 15. So she decided to run away with her boyfriend. And she was sleeping in unlocked cars. And it didn't work out with the boyfriend. She's only 15. So she decided... now, this is 1978. Like I say, she's 15. And I suppose hitchhiking was still considered a safe way to get around. So she hitchhiked her way to Berkeley in California to visit her granddad. And she stayed there a couple of weeks, but I think she got a bit homesick. She wanted to come back. But it was said that she was looking actually for a lift to Los Angeles, not back to Las Vegas. So I'm not too sure about that. I've seen writings where she was trying to get home, and then other ones where she's trying to get to Los Angeles. So I'm not 100% on that. But on the 29th of September 1978, Mary, who was obviously had a thumb up or however she was doing it, a gentleman pulled over by the name of Lawrence Singleton. Now, Lawrence at this time was 50 years of age, and it was said that there was a couple of other girls who were hitchhiking at that time who seen Lawrence, and they said they got such a bad feeling about him, they didn't get in the car. But Mary, I don't know whether young and maybe naive and innocent, she said he reminded her of her granddad. I suppose because he was 50, had sort of that kind of appearance. And she obviously considered that she'd be safe with him. Now, it was said that she started to feel comfortable and she fell asleep And when she kind of woke up, she realised he was going the wrong way. No, Mary, even though innocent and naive and everything, she was quite, she could speak up for herself. She wasn't a pushover. And she kicked off, and she actually got a stick to him. In the kind of, you better turn the car around. And he managed to convince her, it was said that either he convinced her that this is a different way, we can go this way, or he turned the car around again. I suppose because it's so long ago, there are going to be conflicting accounts of certain details, not the important details, but these little details of whether he did this and this. But either way, she wasn't happy with what he'd done, but he managed to convince her, it was all kinds of a misunderstanding, and it was okay, and go back to sleep, everything's fine. And it was said that she still, even though she was a little bit dubious of him, he managed to put her mind at rest, and she went back to sleep. And when she came to, he pulled into some sort of service station, and he'd got out, and she noticed her shoes were undone, her laces were undone, sorry. And she got out of the car, and as she was bent down doing her laces, I think she felt someone coming behind her, but didn't have a chance to turn around because she was hit with, I believe it's a hammer, over her head. And when she came to, she realised who it was, and it was Lawrence Singleton. He violently raped her. It was actually a sledgehammer, it was a sledgehammer he'd hit her with at the rest stop. And after violently raped her, it was awful. It would have been an awful experience, and during the time she kept on just begging to be set free. And he took her up to this cliffside, down a quiet track. And I think his words were, "If you want to be set free, I'll set you free." And with the sledgehammer, he proceeded to cut off both her arms at the elbow, both of them, and then throw her 30 foot down the side of the cliff. Then he walked down the cliff and stuffed her into a pipe, water pipe, I believe. And then he climbed back up the cliff and he left her for dead. And you would think, having gone through that experience, oh my God, she was 15 years old. She was 15 years old. But you would think, having gone through that experience, that, that would have been the end of, Mary Vincent Story. And she was such a strong girl, and she got herself out of that pipe. She climbed her way up that 30-foot cliff, and walked 3 miles along the road, holding her arms up to stop the blood, and apparently the insides of her arms coming out. Oh God, the poor girl. And eventually, apparently the first car that's seen her must have got a bit of a fright and carried on driving. I don't understand how seeing a child naked, with 2 severed arms would be threatening to you. I don't quite understand that, but But the second car pulled over, luckily, and obviously took her straight to the hospital. Now, once there, Mary, it was said that she postponed going to sleep, even after everything she'd been through. She postponed going to sleep so that she could lie one of the police, you know, the people who do the composite sketches. So that could be got out there, and she told them his name was Lawrence. He'd given her his proper name. Now, Lawrence was actually picked up very, very quickly, really quickly. And Mary, oh my goodness, at such a young age, she testified against him. She actually testified against him. And he was found guilty. He got 14 years. 14 years. And we know we weren't going to do all of them, but he got 14 years. And Mary said that she heard him whisper. I mean, why was she allowed so close to her? Why was he allowed so close to her? I'm presuming it was when she was walking back from the stand in some way. But she said that he says to her, I'll finish this job even if it takes the rest of my life. Poor girl. Yeah, she didn't even get justice. She lived. She went through all of that. She lived. And she didn't even get justice at the end of it. It was said that in a civil lawsuit, Mary won $2.56 million. Sounds fabulous, doesn't it? Sounds great if you can get it. Yeah, Mary didn't get it. Mary didn't get that. Sorry if that's shaking. It's all a bit wonky at the minute. I do apologise. But yeah, Mary didn't get that money because obviously Lawrence was unemployed. He was just going up and down the interstate trying to pick up young girls. So he didn't have a job. Now Mary, she was given prosthetic arms. I did see them. I kind of got the hook at the end. It wasn't, I presume she'll have the one, you know, you can get the ones with hands now. But don't forget this would have been late 70s, early 80s. But, you know, she was made prosthetic arms. And she just didn't let it beat her. She just didn't. She was determined that this wasn't going to define her. This wasn't going to be who she was. No, that's the girl who, you know, she wanted to make sure that she was going to be something else than what he had done. And she pursued a career in art at the University of Nevada. She went on to marry a man called Tom. That's all I've got on him, to be honest. And they went on to have 2 sons. It was shy. I think that's why we don't know much about him, because they did go on. It didn't last long. They went on to have they did divorce. But Mary's story doesn't end there. This is why it's an awful story, because normally in these stories that I do, it normally ends with a trial, the conviction, hopeful conviction, the sentence, and then what the victim or the victim's family have, you know, gone on to do after. And, you know, that tends to be the end of the story, I'm telling you. Not this time. You see, Lawrence was released from prison after 8 years. 8 years for what he done to that little girl. And you might say she's only 15. At 15, you're still a little girl. You're not an adult. She was a child. And he did 8 years. She was only 23 when he got out. Possibly turning 24. But anyway, Lawrence went on to live a new life in Florida. It's good for some, isn't it? And apparently he kept his nose clean for quite a while. He kept his nose clean. And it was his neighbours. A couple of the neighbours says he seemed a bit dodgy, but he grew on them. Kept himself to himself. Used to sometimes have the neighbours' kids playing in his garden. You know, a typical granddad. You know, by this point, I presume he's heading into his 60s. You know, he's very, you know, no one would know what this man was capable of. Apparently, he did try to go, when he got released from prison, apparently he did try to go home to his original area, I believe. And there was uproar, which is why he ended up in Florida. I read somewhere along the lines that, yeah, he wasn't welcome back at his old home. No, no surprise there. So Lawrence made it to 1997, nearly 20 years after what had happened to Mary. 10 years he managed to keep his nose clean. Well, as far as we know, he kept his nose clean. But that urge obviously never left him. There was a lady by the name of Roxanne Hayes. Roxanne had 3 young children. And she was 31 when she came across Lawrence, who raped and murdered her and left her 3 young boys without her, 3 young kids, without a mum. He murdered her. So I can't help wondering, who let him out? Who let this man out and thought, yeah, he'll be okay? Was it because of his age? Was it because Mary lived? Well, this isn't America. I'm forever praising the justice system, although there are, I think I mentioned it in my last video, maybe the one before, that, I've watched a few things on the justice system, and it's obviously not as trustworthy as I was led to believe. But when I see this, it's how did he get out after 8 years? How did that happen? He brutally raped Mary. He severed her arms at the elbow, both of them. He threw her off a cliff. He shoved her in a pipe and left her for dead. And this man, after 8 years, was considered no threat to society. Really? And Roxanne Hayes paid for that decision with her life. Is it me? Is that me? Is that me thinking, oh, well, maybe they thought after 8 years it'd be okay? Really? Now, bearing in mind, he had been 50 in 1978, so at this point when he did this to Roxanne, he would have been 69. He would have been 69. I can't help but think that this man didn't just get to 50 and decide, do you know what, I feel like I'm not reaching my full potential in my life. I really feel like after living this life, I need to branch out. I need to branch out in what I'm doing. So, yeah. Let me go and find a young 15-year-old girl that I can, disfigure and, ruin her life. I can't believe that happened, but I haven't seen anything. I mean, please correct me. I could have not been looking in the right places. Maybe I didn't research it well enough. But I couldn't see that he had previous for anything along those lines at all. But poor Mary, she has to testify again in the murder trial of Roxanne Hayes because it was organised. And I'm really glad they allowed that to be entered into, what do you call it now? Entered into the case, entered into, oh my goodness, my brain's gone dead. It's not even a hard word. What I'm looking for, it's not even a hard word. Into evidence, is that right? But I'm really glad they allowed Mary to testify, is what I'm trying to say. Because I know in some cases they could say, no, one's not related to the other. and a jury would never know. Now, given what he did to Roxanne, I would hope that he wouldn't have been found not guilty anyway. But and he put through Mary through another trial. He put her through another trial. This man. He was actually found guilty and he was sentenced to death. Possibly should have done that first time round, no? Or at least life without parole. At least. But he didn't even face that. Because in 2001, at the age of 74, he died of cancer. He died of cancer. He didn't even he didn't even face justice, you know, what was coming to him. He even managed to get out of that. This man, you know, if you have a look, you can see him, and he's kind of the stuff of nightmares. He is the stuff of nightmares, but at the same time, you can understand why Mary thought perhaps she could trust him. Because he does look really inconspicuous and like an old man, and, you know, he's probably got a family at home and everything's hunky-dory. You know, you can see to a 15-year-old, I don't even think it was down to her age. I think if at that time, and it was, hitchhiking was perfectly, you know, a perfectly acceptable way of getting from one state to another, you can kind of see why she didn't really question him, why she would have found him more trustworthy than, I don't know, someone 20 years younger than him, 30 years younger than him, you know, who could possibly, I suppose maybe she thought because she was young, you know, she could fight him, he's an old man. You know, I don't even know if that would have crossed her mind. Maybe she just thought it was going to be a very easy chat. I don't know. But, you know, you've got her life that was essentially ruined. She hasn't allowed it to. She hasn't allowed him to define her life. And I think that goes to show just what amazing strength of character she has. And, you know, she's bringing up her boys. She's become an advocate for victims' rights. She gives a lot of motivational speeches. You know, she's quite strict on her boys. Obviously now her boys will be a lot older, but, you know, she was very strict with the boys and warning them that strangers, and, you know, which you can imagine would have been a big factor within their upbringing, quite rightly so. I don't think you can teach your children enough about the dangers of society. I mean, we all want our kids to believe that everything's sunshine and roses and everyone's amazing, everyone's lovely, and everyone's got their best interests. Strangers you know, are just friends they haven't met yet. You know, you would love to teach your children that, and we can't. We just can't. You know, children have to be taught that there are bad people out there. There are people where their interests, you know, their best interests aren't being looked out for by these people. And unfortunately, there are people out there that want to hurt other people. And it's a horrific part of life. And it's just so sad. It's so sad. You know, it's an awful story. I suppose it's fantastic that she hasn't allowed that to, like I say, define who she is, and she's gone on to live her life. And, you know, like I say, she's got her 2 boys, and she's out there giving motivational speeches for victims' rights. And, you know, she's, a lot of the stories that I do, whether it be the victim or the victim's families, a lot of them do go on to do very noble things, and go on to, you know, try and help others. And I look, you know, I have so much respect for that. I really do, because, you know, I do say, I think I'd just be in a black hole, you know, in a box somewhere. I just don't know how. You must have such a strength of your own character just to, you know, just the perseverance to fight through it, and to go on to help others. I just think it's amazing. So, yeah, that's the Harrowing Mary Vincent story. And just thank you so much for joining me again. And I have got another story for you that I'm going to do quite soon. Awful. Literally only heard about it a couple of days ago, even though I think it happened 2018. You know, if I do a story from long ago, I like to bring it back up to date. And this one is quite current. It was only a couple of years ago. But I hadn't heard about it at the time. And yeah, I'm still trying to get my own head around it to be able to share it with you. It's horrific. So that will be my next story to you. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all my new subscribers. Any comments you've got, please pop them in the box. And in the box, comment section. Box sounds a little bit in the comment section. And I will get back to you all. Obviously, like I say, if I don't, it's just that YouTube hasn't notified me, and, you know, I might be a little bit slow in seeing it. So please don't think I'm ignoring you. And just thank you so much again for joining me, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Take care.